Welcome back to Left Anchor. I'm Alexi the Greek.
And I'm Ryan Cooper. So today for our guest for the podcast, we have Bethany Andres-Beck. Am I saying that correctly?
Yep, Andres-Beck.
Great. Only slight mistake. I have to screw up everyone's name a little bit. It's in the contract, you know. But Bethany is a candidate for Congress running for the 6th district. Is that correct? In Massachusetts? Right. And that's like the North Shore, like the northeast corner of the state, right?
Yep. From Lynn all the way up to the border with New Hampshire.
Great. Yeah. That it's not a place that I've spent very much time. In fact, I don't think I've ever been there. So yeah, you'll have to tell us all about it just now. But anyway, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
So I think, we could start out with just a bit of background. Can you give us kind of a little capsule life story and what led you to become, a candidate for national office?
Absolutely. Yeah. So like a lot of people, I moved to Massachusetts for college, and I went to school in Western Massachusetts and then came east afterwards and got a job.
Where in Western? Which school?
Smith.
Okay.
So Northampton. And I studied theater there.
Yeah, I knew some folks who went to Williams. That's why I asked. But anyway, sorry to interrupt.
No worries. So yeah, I studied theater. And then by the time I graduated, I realized I didn't want to do that professionally. I wanted to do that as a hobby. And so I worked my way into tech via healthcare and waiting tables and food stamps and the community health clinic in Alston. And eventually I got, my first programming job was at the Harvard School of Public Health doing health decision science modeling. So looking at vaccines and how cost effective they are and how we can best get them to people and how you can have the biggest impact on diseases and how they spread. So started with that, did some work, self-driving cars, lower level stuff, and then cell phones came around. And all of a sudden, we needed twice as many web developers as we'd ever needed before. And so I was able to work my way into web development at TripAdvisor, Twitter, and then I went to work for Hillary for America. And I spent a year of my life trying to stop Trump the first time. And after that disappointment, I'd like to say it was a great experience and then briefly really terrible, and then it was over. And then I left national politics and had regular jobs and also focused on more local political stuff and moved to Middleton, Massachusetts with my partner. We got settled in here and I discovered it's one of the redder towns in the district. And there was a very active MAGA movement in the area. And so I started off just standing outside a municipal election with a sign that said support all students that I'd written on a bit of cardboard. And I made a bunch of friends that day. And with 2 of them, we rebooted our Democratic Town Committee that hadn't met in a while. And we started organizing locally. And around municipal races, I'm on our Affordable Housing Trust, our Master Plan Committee, just getting involved in local governance where we can really focus on outcomes and things that matter to people's lives instead of these big national talking points, which is what a lot of the MAGA folks were focused on. And so we were able to build a pretty strong coalition here, which includes Republicans, because a lot of them still want the potholes fixed.
Yeah.
And then Trump got reelected, and I was like, oh man, these people being mean to my librarian it's still bad, but also they're getting discouraged because they keep losing. And the national scene, I watched a Democratic Party just take entirely the wrong lessons from that election. And my congressman in particular was going out and saying the problem was the Democrats had moved too far left and needed to move to the right. And I thought that was exactly backwards. What I saw was not people who thought the Democrats who had gone too far. It was people staying home because the Democrats hadn't done enough to actually help working people. And so I thought I wanted to stand up and show that we can run on politics that matter to people, that speak to the actual issues in our lives, and people will show up for that.
And is that Seth Moulton? Is that your current representative?
Yeah. And then he dropped out to run for Senate. So now it's an open primary and we get to pick what kind of Democrat we want.
All right. And are you a DSA member?
I am a DSA member. I'm not
Okay.
endorsed, but we started the DSA chapter in the North Shore. We started back up about 10 months ago. So
Gotcha. That's interesting to me. I did not know, sort of, yeah, another person I know in DSA, suggested you as a, potential guest. And I did not know that you worked for Hillary Clinton in 2016, right?
yeah.
So that's a bit of a voyage. I feel like that. What was the story there? It was pretty radicalizing for me in 2016. That's when I joined DSA in 2016. But yeah, I mean, what was your story like there?
Yeah, so I first got involved in politics protesting the Iraq and Afghanistan wars back in 2002-ish, a long time ago. And then got involved in Occupy when we had decolonized Boston, was the Occupy camp here, and did a bunch of work around that. And so I've always been sort of to the left. What I was excited about with Hillary's campaign was national childcare, regulating the Wall Street regulation, attacking quarterly capitalism, all these like real problems I saw solutions to. And it wasn't like what that campaign taught me was that policy is not enough, that we have to show people who we are and what we stand for in ways that make sense to them in their lives. And so it was, and I got involved in the Democratic Party because of Howard Dean. He told me I was the Democratic wing of the Democratic Party. And I believed him. And I've ever since, I don't agree with all Democrats on everything. We're never going to align on everything, but I'm the Democratic wing of the Democratic Party. And I'm here to make the party better.
Imagine the days when a little over exuberant yell could cancel you.
Oh, right? Like, oh, man.
Dean scream, right? That was a different climate.
Yeah, I mean, if listeners don't know this history, like Dean was kind of like the Bernie Sanders of 2004, like a sort of analogous. He was not as left as Bernie would be in 2016, but he was like, unapologetically against the Iraq invasion. The Democratic wing of the Democratic Party. He was, holding that banner. And
the most populist of everyone.
Yeah, and he was winning in the polls. He was ahead by quite a bit. And then he was at this rally. I think he lost in like New Hampshire or Iowa or something like that. And he was at this rally of supporters who were just screaming delirious, like yelling and they're really excited. And someone in the media got a hold of an audio in which it was just his microphone. And he's like yelling to be heard over this. And he's, and we're going to go to Oregon, and we're going to go to Michigan, and at the end he's like, ah. But it sounded funny when it was, you couldn't hear any of the crowd noise. Like if you watch a video of it from the audience, you can barely even hear what he's saying. It's so loud in there. But without that, it was this goofy. And the media, I mean, this was like turned me against like the Washington political press, like this absolute disgusting psychopaths, every last one of them. But they played that clip of him doing a goofy scream like 600 times in a week. I think CNN, but they later apologized to him for doing that. But they just took him down. It was one of the most like shameless political hatchet jobs I've ever seen before or since. But anyway, yeah.
And I think it was partially because he was speaking to the problems millennials had. But there were like 2 years of millennials that could vote at that time. Yep. And so he was talking about student loan debt and the price of housing and the fact that at the time, like none of the healthcare programs applied to young people getting out of college. There were a lot of things that you just could not qualify for if you were a young person. And all of the Bill Clinton cuts to welfare had done a number on us. And, we hadn't even made student loan debt so you can't get rid of it in bankruptcy. Like it's gotten worse since then, not better. And he was way ahead.
Oh, that's right. Joe Biden hadn't done that work for us yet.
Yep. Yeah, exactly that.
Yeah. And Dean would have some significance too in the party. I think he's the one that had the 50 state approach, right?
Yeah, he won the midterms for us.
In 2006, yeah.
Yeah. Before Rahm Emanuel came in with a different theory of politics.
That's one way to put it, yeah.
Yeah, we're going to cut everybody's index finger off.
Well, these battles are continual, though. It's relevant to today as ever, I think.
Absolutely.
Can you tell us, a little bit about the 6th district? It's a place, like I was saying, I know very little about it, other than like just the crassest type of Massachusetts stereotypes that I could imagine, so is it just nothing but Ben Affleck's all the way?
So it's 39 different towns and cities. And it's a big area that has been underinvested in, I'd say. Like if you look at a map of public transportation in Massachusetts, it basically goes around the district and will come in at the very bottom corner. But there's this big empty section, and that's the 6th district. There's a lot of smaller towns with more single family homes and lots of trees. And there's all the coastal communities with the concerns around, climate change and how that's affecting our fishing industries and our clam beds. We have the challenge of local media got bought up by private equity, and a lot of it got killed. So there is no paper that covers my town. My town also doesn't have public sewer. Some of half the town doesn't have public water. We're missing like very basic infrastructure that the Romans had figured out. And at the same time, there's a lot of there's a vibrant art scene in Salem. Places like Amesbury are affordable for Massachusetts standards, but everybody is struggling with traffic, with housing affordability. A lot of young adults living with older relatives, their parents, their grandparents, aunts, uncles, because that's how you can afford to live around here.
It sounds like the platform of municipal socialism that's been popular for not just Mamdani, but for a lot of candidates is something that is cutting across the usual ideological divides that might apply to your district as well, perhaps.
Yeah, absolutely. We also have 2 municipal power companies that do incredible work because we were investing in the 70s and 90s in renewable energy like hydroelectric dams, nuclear in New York, a lot of these bigger projects that mean that now we have really cheap energy because we're not relying on fossil fuels. And then you can also talk about anyone has driven over the border at some point to New Hampshire to go to the state-run liquor store. And so socialism is very easy to talk about in my district because we have some really solid examples.
That's funny. So, I mean, what is your sort of theory of, the case? Like what, for example, is Seth Moulton missing in terms of like that district? Like what needs are going unaddressed?
Yeah, there's certainly those like infrastructure pieces. But what I've been talking a lot about is not just Seth Moulton, but Congress in general has been dropping the ball on regulating AI. Like a bunch of times I'll call someone on the phone and they'll ask me if I'm a robot. And we can't trust that our neighbors are still our neighbors and not a robot. And that's a scary, uncertain time to be running in. So I was expecting to run on, Saving Democracy. My website's bethfordemocracy.com. And then I will tell people that I'm a programmer, and the questions I get are about technology. Right. People asking me, can the government spy on me through my cell phone? And I have to ask them, well, what kind of cell phone do you have? Which is not the answer I would like to be giving them, but that's the answer that's out there. And there's not really people in Congress, even the people in Congress who know about technology, who might have a background in computer science, they mostly became CEOs. And that's who goes to Congress. It's not working programmers. It's definitely not working programmers who have done union organizing and I organized my coworkers to address the problems that we saw in these bigger tech companies and then the people who were causing the problems for us are the ones that Congress is listening to.
Plus, wasn't it the big, beautiful bill that almost tried to slide in there, preventing states from regulating AI?
Yes. And there's been a executive order that is trying to do the same thing. But of course, that has, that just creates lawsuits. We're very good at creating lawsuits right now. But
Trump has no sense of what the executive can actually do, or I think he recently tried to tell the NCAA to do something, not knowing that that's not the government. And that's
Who's my cabinet? Who's my secretary of NCAA? Didn't I appoint somebody? Is it Eric?
I think the other thing we're seeing is that the power of the presidency is whatever people let you do. And that's also the power of every individual citizen.
If you're the president and the opposition party are cowards, they let you do it.
That is the problem. Yeah. And so I think a part of what I bring to this is creativity. And I'm also used to working with people who like to get away with things, because programmers tend to be the sort of people who will find the loophole in every rule. And building things that work for programmers is a lot about like, well, we're not trying to cover every case with a rule. You have to actually have a conversation with people about what are the consequences when we choose to do that thing. And that's true for executives. It's true for C-suite, like the people at the top of the company, the same way it is for the workers at the bottom.
I imagine even across the aisle, insofar as DC permits across the aisle relationships, your expertise and understanding of technology will be quite an asset for just confused Congress people who want to understand what's going on.
Right. And I'm very used to talking to people with MBAs and law degrees and customer service experts, because those are all people who I've worked with in my day job, and being able to explain to them what a technical trade-off before them is. I'm happy to sit down and
Are you used to old senile people? Because I hear there's some of those in Congress.
Certainly some people would qualify, probably. I think it's important to be able to have, conversations with those broad ranges of people. And if I can't explain something to literal children, it's probably because I don't understand it well enough to translate it into the terms that they can understand.
Yeah. Boy, it is tough, when you're talking about AI in particular, to sort out like what is going on, because it's like there's a cohort of critics who are they're very skeptical of the technology to the point of like not being willing to sort of even investigate it. And then you have the deranged hype beast guys who are like, we're going to create God, and it's going to be my slave. And they're just like rolling their eyes and foaming at the mouth. But can you speak about that in a little bit more detail? Like what's your sort of sketch of a regulatory scheme for AI? You mentioned surveillance, but for how these companies could use public domain text or have to get copyright. Like, what's your thoughts there?
Yeah, so I think the copyright question is probably currently up to the courts, because we just don't have a decision yet. And we've seen how copyright conversations go in this country. And I almost think that that's like a longer term question compared to some of the really. So the thing that I worry about is people are using technologies for things they're not good at, that they aren't designed to do. And companies are selling them these technologies for things that they weren't really designed to do. And we do have other kinds of algorithms and approaches to AI that would serve, like war strategy. And generative text generation is not the right answer if you want good war strategy. It's just the easy answer to get some answer. And the people trying to sell this want to sell it for as many things as possible. So they have a vested interest. They are trying to portray this as one hammer and everything's a nail, and just give us all the money and we can fire all the workers. And that is not going to work for the people who are stuck with these incompetent tools that are being used for things that they shouldn't be used for. I also don't think that just trying to shut them down is going to work, because we do have smaller models. We have things you can run on a laptop.
Yep.
And you're not going to, magic all of those away. What we can do is watermark regimes, things that, there will still be people who run their own models and get things without watermarks. And that's fine because it's going to be pretty hard, right? And it's sort of like the 3D printed guns. Yeah, they exist. That's not, most people are just going to go to the gun store and buy a gun. Like, it's a lot easier. And I think of it like guns. It's a tool, and can be a dangerous tool. And it's one that I think we're seeing is really engaging to people. And so that's the other thing I worry about, is that it's like a dopamine factory. It has some of those kind of addictive properties. I know that, a lot of programmers who are using the software generation models, which are some of the more effective things right now. It's a really good use case for the technology, and they'll end up staying up all night, right? These are people working weekends, skipping meals. And I see us wanting to spend taxpayer dollar to send this to high schools. And like, that's not what high schoolers need. And so the way I've been describing it is like, we shouldn't be handing children, or we shouldn't be paying to hand children these like chainsaws that are haunted by the ghost of 4chan. Like, even if it's a useful thing, it doesn't mean that we should be handing it to elementary school children.
Absolutely. And that's, in academia, as well as I'm sure K through 12, there are probably lots of debates and discussions over the dangers of introducing this in the same way that just screens generally and the attention span has been ruined, and all of those, well-known issues with technology and critical thinking and all that. AI is so tough because it's so potentially expansive and things that it could affect, from people are lonely, and so they develop romantic relationships. People are suicidal, and they seek out AI as a therapist. And there's all kinds of regulations I think I've been seeing in the works in PA and other places around, preventing those kind of social harms. How do you think it's best to introduce constituents in the public to like the wide array of dangers, but given what you say is kind of an inevitable reality that we can't just wish away, right? It's something that's going to be part of our lives.
Yeah, so I think that, like, we trust that microwaves aren't going to give us radiation burns. And we can do that because we have consumer protections. So I want consumer protections to apply to software, which they currently might, but end user license agreements have kept them out of that for a long time. And it's kind of an open question of which courts are going to side. So we could just clarify that and make it clear that actually you are responsible. If you write software and it does a bunch of harm to somebody, you are responsible for that. And it's foreseeable. Like, these are things that we can foresee that this could happen from the software. You should be taking that into account. And then the other part of it is, what does this do to society and how is it being used? And the problem is, right now we are massively subsidizing these robots. If you fire a person and replace it with a robot that costs just as much as the person's salary and is exactly as productive as that person is, the government rewards you with a giant tax cut because you don't have to pay the 20% payroll taxes. And it's like 20% cheaper to just hire a robot instead of a person. I think that's exactly backwards. Like, these companies that are making a bunch of money without participating in society, like, you've got to pay back somehow for the roads you're using and the all of the space you're taking up in America. We're seeing this with the data centers, where they're getting, there was a Lowell data center that got $77 million of subsidies. And is that really the thing that we want to be spending our tax dollars on? Because every tax break is government spending.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Would you support then, like, it's about externalities and taxing the things that are harmful and negative. But then also, if we're going to de-link production from like human beings doing work, should we then support policies like universal basic income that de-link the ability for someone to have income from the requirement that they find a job? If we're squeezing their job, like if we're getting rid of their jobs and replacing them through no choice of their own, why should we require that that's the way that they can, feed themselves, right?
Yeah, and I think we also are going to see that there's a lot of things the market's not great at funding. For example, local journalism, art,
Public goods, yeah.
All the public goods and things that are going to prevent model collapse. Like, even the AI people are worried about, like, what happens when humans stop writing. So if we take, so I want a robot tax where we tax automation the same as human labor. So there's no preference for robots over people. You can't dodge your taxes by replacing people with robots. And then we can take that tax revenue and first pay for Social Security and Medicare, which otherwise are in big trouble, which is wild to me that we haven't been talking about what happens when payroll taxes fall again. And then we can also use it to fund local journalism, art programs like the one in Ireland, where they're sponsoring artists.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
And just the very human forms of production. We could have such a rich cultural life if we were all benefiting when these new technologies come in.
Yeah, it's something I wonder about, if these AI guys, these Silicon Valley tech bro CEOs have really thought about that, if their utopian dreams of AI that replaces all the jobs and they just have an army of slaves to do whatever they want. Well, it's like, who is going to buy all of the stuff then? If like you have just totally eradicated your entire customer base of anyone who has any money in their pockets, like, what are you going to do? How are you going to sell anything?
I think people genuinely forget the point of capitalism is the distribution of scarce goods and resources. And inequality just breaks it. Like it's a badly compressed JPEG now, and which is such a nerdy analogy. But like we don't have, people don't have money, they are no longer participating in the system. And now the system just isn't doing what it was supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
And so I think that's where higher marginal tax rates on top incomes bought us an extra 100 years of stability. It's like genuinely deeply impressive that we avoided another Great Depression.
Yeah.
Are there other proposals or bills that are being talked about out there right now? I'm thinking maybe of like Bernie and Ro Khanna's make billionaires pay their fair share proposal, and a few other. I mean, there seems to be a lot of popular billionaire focused proposals, but there's like, Rashida Tlaib's economic dignity for all. There's a lot of things that are all about like taking advantage of the populist spirit on kind of both sides of the aisle right now and saying, hey, let's make the rich pay their fair share and look at all the things that government can do. Do you have thoughts? Is it one of those like whatever we can get through in terms of like pragmatically in the moment, whatever, strike whatever, works at the time, but have a few things in the pipeline, if you will, to mix my metaphors.
Yeah. Like very often there's 4 or 5 or 6 totally reasonable solutions to something. And the question is, which one can we build? And there's trade-offs between them. Which one can we build a coalition around to get done? I think some of the challenges with wealth taxes is just the accounting. So I always think about how are we actually going to accomplish the thing? How are we enforcing whatever it is we're doing? Right. Because that's one of the big challenges with any of these questions. We've also seen the success of the millionaire tax in Massachusetts, which it's not billionaires, but frankly, by the time I'm making that much money, like the difference between making $20,000 a year and $60,000 a year was night and day. The difference between making $60,000 a year and $120,000 a year is not nearly as big a change to my life as that first thing. So few more dollars at some point become less useful. And I do think that I care less about those later dollars being and I think people get stuck on the like leaderboard of it instead of remembering like this is all about what does this do for our lives. And I think that some of this is what can we build. Some of it is that taxes on income are really easy to admit. It's the same way that we tax property taxes because real estate isn't going anywhere. We know exactly where it is, and we can send an assessor out to look at it, and we can see what you built there. And so some of these are what is easy to administer instead of like what's if we were in a magical mathematical video game, what would we do? No, a lot of this is we're in real life, and we're very we are limited by what real life is going to. If we're trying to like tax somebody's wine collection in their basement, I feel like we have lost the plot.
Right. Whereas if you just want to, like Matt Brunig has in the past talked about various taxes that already exist for corporations that go public. The SEC charges an infinitesimally small tax for each trade. There's a lot of things that are just built in and done already, but at like tiny levels. And if you just like turn it up to like a little bit to like 3% instead of 0.01% or whatever, like it has this massive amount of difference. And to the actual corporation, it's still a kind of small amount. Yeah.
Well, and we've seen corporate taxes get cut from 15% to 5% with basically no change that anyone out on the street even noticed. And so some of this is about, and it's why I don't get into all of the nitty gritty details of everything when I'm just out talking to people, because it actually distracts from what is it that we're going to accomplish with our policy?
Except I think it's important to tell people who might not understand policy, the policies are there. Like we can figure out the way to get, you know what I mean? Like the money's there. We can, that's not the issue. As long as they don't think that that's the problem, I think that's a good thing to convey, right?
Yeah. And then when they ask me questions, I'm always happy to get into these things and talk about here's one way we could do this. There are others also that would also work, but here's one way. And that's the important thing, is just unlocking people's imagination.
That's right. Yeah. Do you have things that people tend to assume or obstacles they think are there when they say that sounds great, but I don't believe it could happen, or I worry it can't happen? Are there typical, maybe whether it's ideological or just common sense questions or objections they have where they don't quite believe that the good things can happen?
I mean, mostly it's about how corporate Congress is. And the fact that most of the time we aren't picking the best politician, we're picking the best fundraiser. And that really limits who ends up going to Congress. And I think also limits who people talk about in Congress, and they ends up in this DC bubble.
Right.
They don't talk, like this is one of the things about trans conversations that come up. None of these people have trans friends, which means you're not in Salem, or you would. Right. Like if you were spending time in these neighborhoods, it's just your neighbors. And you end up with people talking about things in these very intellectual, like, oh, I read a paper about ways, instead of like, oh, we know about this because we've been living it. And I think that disconnect, the sense that politicians are some other kind of people, they're the people who went to private school and Harvard and live in DC and are in their own world, and we're just like picking out our mascot, is really alienating. And we've also seen that the right wing has worked really effectively with not that many people, but like if you can mobilize a small group of people, you can dramatically change the conversation about these issues. And so part of what I'm trying to do with my campaign is not just get myself elected, but build that progressive community in the North Shore. And then we can collaborate with other progressive communities around the country and push for these policies to actually happen on people who maybe aren't used to hearing from constituents about specific policy things. And that form of power, I think, becomes the way that we can get things through an like impossibly gridlocked Congress
Absolutely.
Is the popular power of actual humans.
Right. Speaking of actual humans, do you know if the others running for, in the Democratic primary and for the 6th district, do you know if any of them are taking money from lobbyists or PACs or super PACs or anything like that?
Yeah. So a lot of people are doing the no corporate PACs thing now, but not ruling out any other PACs or super PACs. And the one candidate who's gets the most press because he's raised the most money, because he's really talented fundraiser and had previously lost a congressional race in a different district. And he is taking money from the executives at companies like Palantir, at DraftKings, at other AI companies, and they get their rich friends together and they'll bundle $20,000, $30,000 and he will talk all day long about how he's not taking corporate PAC money, but he's taking more money than he could have gotten from a corporate PAC from those same companies.
Wow. Yeah.
And it means that when Palantir steals more of our data, that those politicians benefit.
You should just have like an ad with like children in Gaza being blown up, and then put that's just like Palantir. This is what this is what your opponent is like. Bedfellows, right? Like,
oh yeah. Oh, and definitely not willing to talk about the genocide in Gaza either. Like, of course.
Wow.
And he doesn't even have an issues page on his website.
We don't need that.
Unwilling to put anything in writing, because some donor might disagree.
Listen, it's not an election; it's an auction. It's the $1 one vote. It is remarkable to me, like the language in the 2010 decision, Citizens United, that abolished like most of the campaign finance regulations, which were inadequate themselves even at the time.
That's right.
But there was Kennedy, I think, who wrote it, Anthony Kennedy, and he said that this will not lead to corruption or the appearance of corruption. And 16 years later, like the country is so corrupt that the crypto industry straight up bought Congress, and they got a huge financial deregulation crypto bill through, and now crypto is being used by Iran to like get around U.S. sanctions. Like just so corrupt that it kicked out the leg of American financial power around the world. And it's like, well, what are you going to do? You can't get money.
That's why Bernie back in 2016, he said the first and most important issue is campaign finance reform and Citizens United, right?
Yeah.
I want to try and use the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court, which is this part of the Constitution that we've never tried using before. And I want to use campaign finance reform and just say, no, we're doing this, and the Supreme Court doesn't get to rule on it as the Constitution lets us do.
Very cool. Yeah, that would be huge.
Yeah, they did that, I think, with the Inflation Reduction Act, jurisdiction stripping, they call it. You could just write in the law, this is not subject to the Supreme Court, because the Constitution says that, the Supreme Court shall have jurisdiction over, under such regulations as Congress may stipulate. And it's not, and what it doesn't say, by the way, is that the Supreme Court can overturn laws of Congress without any oversight or recourse from anyone. That's not in there anywhere.
Marbury versus Madison is.
Yeah, they made it up. But this is why
the secret is we made it all up.
There's a lot of things we can still make up. We can yet make up new things that might help us if we want. That's it. We've got to, politics is something that we can be. It doesn't have to be the crazy fascists that are imaginative in their politics. We too could be imaginative and creative, as he suggested.
Yeah. I think that's something that writing software really teaches you, is that things work better when we all agree that there's a set of rules we all follow, and we can sort of predict, driving on the right side of the road. Utterly arbitrary and super important that we all agree.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's probably part of the AI concern, is that shared reality seems to be eroding from Trump. Trump and AI equally, I think, are undermining reality in our conception of it. It's just incredible. Are you talking to people who understand that basic problem, that we don't live in the same universe with each other in a certain kind of way, and that like doing anything that takes dialogue and agreement is just like seems like a fundamental thing we have to get past before we can do some great things, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And interestingly, that includes Republicans too. I talked to a guy just this morning who
they're human too, as far as I can tell.
Who said, I've always voted for Republicans, but go ahead and pitch me. Right. And I started talking about AI and the problems with it. And he's like, oh yeah, though that's a really good point. And I am concerned about that. And we can't trust what's real anymore. And I hate that. I'm like, yeah, that sucks. And we all agree it sucks. So we could do something about it if we had people who understood the problem. And it's partially just that it's early. It's so early. And there are people in Congress. Dick Durbin got elected to Congress before the internet was invented.
He went to school using a stone tablets and a chisel. That was how he learned to write. I want to switch gears a little bit, though, because you are a trans non-binary person. Am I getting that right?
Yep. Yeah.
And so if you are elected, you would be the first and only trans non-binary person in Congress. Is that also correct?
First non-binary person.
Right. Okay.
Sarah McBride is also trans. But yeah, I'd be the first person. I was saying it would be the least gendered Congress ever. Because I'm not a man or a woman, and I came out 20 plus years ago before the word non-binary was coined. Like we've been figuring out this language thing. I think the internet really brought some of that along, and I started shaving as a teenager and tried to blend in, and then at some point I gave up, and then I grew my beard out during COVID, and I was like, oh, this is awesome, I'm going to keep this. And I use any all pronouns. It's basically impossible to misgender me, and I think it's a kind of like it's very far from this stereotype a lot of people have. And so one of the things I've seen in my town is that, I'm serving on committees with people who probably have never worked with a non-binary person before. And after a couple years, you just get used to it. And it's one of the great things about the AI conversation, because it's so far outside of all of these made up issues that like the Republicans are spending millions of dollars trying to turn these things into political issues so they can turn people out to vote.
Right.
And just talking about something that Fox News hasn't bothered to tell people what to think about yet.
Right.
Yeah.
Have you encountered much of this scaremongering, especially in a place that doesn't have local journalism, where nationally divisive issues are a thing, and where the right, I mean, it's not just the right, because the New York Times has been absolutely atrocious, right, when it comes to trans issues, and of course, Fox and everything else loves to use that as a cudgel, and Trump, made 1 million ads about trans inmates, and right, just all kinds of. How much do you encounter that propaganda and that scaremongering has like infiltrated and reached people locally?
Oh, absolutely. We had people try to ban books. We have a school board member. The reason I was out there with the sign "This is support all students" is because we had a school board member actively running on a platform of bullying trans kids, of which there's like one we all know her. Like, you're not gonna, like, why are you making this one kid your like life's obsession? That's really weird. Yes. And now he's going to run for the state house.
Wow. And do you find that it's one or two kind of crazy bigots like that are just loud, or do you find that there's a kind of audience for that where people maybe assume, or kind of that message resonates, like, or are they just kind of like, I don't want to hear about what's wrong with you, I want to focus on affordability or whatever, right?
Yeah, I think
a mix maybe.
So I think that's where the New York Times is really insidious.
Yeah.
And this, like, it's coming from like England, and there was like an online forum, Mumsnet, that was like the 4chan for middle-aged British women.
England has just the TERFs over there. It's just insane, right? J.K. Rowling and all just it's a huge problem. And it was like one person at the BBC was in this weird toxic internet forum and brought it in, and now it's like, so it's we're back to like, there's this group of people who all went to Harvard together who are talking to each other, who are spreading these stories, and then they're trickling down to my town via Fox News and the New York Times. And so people, the Massachusetts had a referendum trying to roll back our trans protections, which have been around since 2012 with no issues. And then 2018, they tried to do a referendum to roll them back, and it got defeated. And the ad that was really effective there was just a bunch of people who work with trans people. It was like, a carpenter being like, yeah, this is my friend. He's cool. Why are you weird? Right. And I feel like that's almost like the one thing is that, a lot of it is younger people who have different language for what they're going through.
I meet a lot of people in their, 50s, 60s, 70s who are like, well, I don't really identify with gender. It's just this thing you got assigned and nobody likes theirs. I'm like, well, some people really do. Some people are it turns out there's some other experiences of the world out there. And it just didn't used to be a thing that people had descriptions of. And at the same time, I have a friend's teenager who was like, well, I read this word in this book and I don't really, what's a jock? I was like, well, back in my day, we didn't have genders. We had cliques. And so it's someone who's like sports is their gender identity. And he was like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. I know some of those. Like,
totally. It's a great analogy.
So I think that there's some of it that's just like, but the thing that comes up is people read these things pretending to be super reasonable. That's like just asking questions, or what about these weird edge cases, or what if, we all know weird people. Like, make the behavior the problem. And no matter I don't care what gender there are, if they're being weird and creepy, that's not okay.
Yeah, it reminds me of students who are worried about like criminal immigrants. And I said, well, if someone's doing a crime, what does it matter what their status is? Like, the police are supposed to, I mean, that's another discussion, but the police are supposed to deal with criminals, whether they're citizens, migrants, like presidents, whatever, right? Like, it's supposed to, theoretically, it shouldn't matter what the status of, but that those things get like grouped together the same way that we criminalize all kinds of people, like it's who they are as people, they're criminal, right?
And all of this is because oil companies want to be able to keep pulling oil out of the ground and making a ton of money off of watching our environment burn.
Yeah.
Like, I really look back to the Al Gore, George W. Bush election, and that's where like the Republicans had to come up with something to distract people from what they actually wanted to do, which is like drive deficit spending, cut programs that are super popular. Like, they're going to cut Medicare using this war as an excuse. Nobody likes when Republicans are in charge, and it's just that they're willing to blatantly lie and then come up with these niche wedge issues that they can publicize instead of their actual beliefs.
Right, which is why when Harris is like, no, I'm the tough one on criminal immigrant gangs, like, was not the right approach. Like,
no, you can't get defensive like that. It's not.
Do you remember in her acceptance speech at the convention, she talked about that we have the most lethal military in the world?
Oh yeah, and I was like, well,
that's so weird.
It's bad. Like, you know how expensive it is to have the most lethal military in the world? Like, that's so, and it's because defense contractors put offices in every district so that they can go after every member of Congress and say, don't you want to give your people money?
That's such a weird thing to say too, or like the most lethal, like what even is that metric? Like couldn't you have the most lethal military if it's just like one guy who's a sniper and you don't have anyone else, no logistics, no guys like cleaning the floors. No, it's just this one guy. All he does is shoot.
But also, you see, that's not a big move from that to the we give no quarter Hegseth stuff.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
no,
like,
I
that's
agree.
the same vibe, like, completely.
And it sounds like you're boasting about Hiroshima.
Yeah,
right.
We sure that was certainly lethal. Yeah, we firebombed the shit out of Tokyo and killed 100,000 people. They were very dead. But I want to go back a little bit on this trans question, the trans question. But like to just directly address like the fact that there's been a movement among a lot of moderate Democrats to basically try to throw trans people under the bus to win. I believe Moulton was saying this, if I'm not mistaken. Gavin Newsom was saying it not that long ago.
Saint Ezra Klein, don't forget.
Yeah, Matt Iglesias has said this several times. I mean, I think he's really gotten pilled on the transphobia stuff. Like, he's quoting Free Press articles and stuff. But like, can you respond to like that argument? From a moral and a political standpoint.
Yeah, part of how I respond to it is just by showing up. And it's part of why visibility is so important, is because just by being there, I can't, like, so many of their arguments just don't work because I'm like, I refute you thus. I'm here. Can we get back to talking about housing? Can we get back to talking about things? And like trans sports, I pivot because the problem with sports in schools is that we're using it as a lottery to see who gets to go to college.
Yeah.
Right. We've turned it
That's right.
into a contest. And the problem with the Hunger Games was not that it wasn't fair. We didn't need a more fair Hunger Games. We should just make college accessible and free for people and all kids. Like not like this is the other thing that we see with trans and gay kids and even just people who disagree with their parents politically, as we make young adults so dependent on their parents that their parents get to have a lot of control over their lives. I don't think that making like how well somebody is going to do in life dependent on do their parents have the resources to throw at them and get to choose whether or not their kid does well, that doesn't set up a stable, healthy society. That's not something we actually want. And when we build policy around the worst little league parent you've ever encountered, it just undermines like all of our trust. And like nobody wants to be going around like testing little girls' DNA.
Or like inspecting genitals. What the hell?
Inspecting genitals. Or like the people who get the most shit in bathrooms are just cis women who have short hair.
Yep.
And like that's why we have gender on our passports at all, is because women started cutting their hair short. And so they added gender onto passports.
Yeah.
And we didn't used to. It didn't used to be a field. And, I have an X on my passport because I submitted my passport like renewal and I have a beard in my photo and it had an F on it and I got it sent back rejected with no information about exactly why. When I submitted it again with an X, they were like, oh yeah, no, you meant for like the government recognizes that sometimes this is a little confusing. And that's all that means. It's just like, don't worry about it. It's fine.
And I know there are trans academics who are not coming to give talks in the United States from across the pond and others who are just, scared and unsure about what's going to happen to them when their passports don't, say what our government wants them to say.
Yeah. And it's like they're trying to make the system just not be able to process my very valid passport.
Yeah.
And as a software engineer, that is deeply offensive that you would break software that currently works. Like this is so backwards. You're like introducing bugs.
I feel like we have to take advantage of your tech expertise. It just occurred to me, what the hell did Elon Musk and his teenage stooges do with Doge and like messing with our systems? Can from a technical expertise standpoint, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I would love to give you more information, but they have not responded to my Freedom of Information Act request for the code. And part of what I would love to do in Congress is go read the code because I can find out. We could know exactly what's going on because all the code that runs somewhere is written down somewhere. They may have deleted things and wiped things by this point, but like part of what worries me about not having anyone in Congress who reads code is that there are classified systems and no oversight.
Right.
Yeah. And I'm sure that they stole our data. I know they didn't release it publicly that we've seen, except for the one time when they just posted it on some public bucket someplace for people to download. But
I should be a real inquiry, right? What if we take back Congress? That should be.
Which companies receive this data? Have they destroyed it? Because all of it, the other thing, I get people like, well, once it's out of the bag, can you get it back? And well, if they had released it on the internet, no. But this data is really valuable and they want it for their own companies. They stole it for their own companies. Right. And so we can go to the computers for all those companies. And it turns out that a hammer, there's also like fancy shredding machines, but you can just destroy the physical computer and the data's gone. So we could figure out who stole data, how it's being used, is it within the bounds of what was supposed to happen before? And do we need new laws to say, no, this never gets to happen again?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it really was basically just that, like the government was occupied by a bunch of like cyber criminals, like the
Yeah.
Russian hackers or something that are just like in the going department to department and just like stealing everything.
Speaking of that, just real quick, because I can't help asking because of your expertise on this, when it comes to our own security, safety in terms of cybersecurity, should we be most concerned with like Russian hackers or the way that we're failing to anticipate or defend against those kind of attacks? Or, I mean, it's been a minute since Edward Snowden showed what the NSA was doing.
Yeah.
Do we know what our own government is doing towards our data and us? Like,
We do not know for sure. We have a lot of various leaks over the years, and we know a lot of it's been fed into Palantir and is being used to direct ICE operations, to track political activists, to go after this administration's opponents. And, I'm also concerned about Russian hackers, in part because they're contributing to those same, the far right movement, and not just in America, but around the world. We're seeing all the problems in West Africa that are absolutely the Wagner Group. We're seeing, certainly the impact on in the Middle East, the war on Lebanon and Gaza. All of these things are the same set of tools. So for ourselves, there's just, I think one thing that helps is just how many of us there are. That there's only so much that they're going to do to any one of us. And like you mentioned trans people who don't want to come here. I also know trans people who are leaving the country. And I certainly thought about it, but this is my country and I want it back. Like I decided that I was going to stay and just become visible enough that if they come after me, somebody's going to notice. Because I think that's the alternative to going into hiding and trying to limit, is that I know that there is data out there about me. And I know that I am in all sorts of databases, probably have been since I was at Occupy, because they've been scraping cell phones for a very long time at protests and things. Part of what we've learned how to do is build movements that are harder to disrupt. So you can't just, assassinate one person anymore and have it be over. Because the FBI did that for a while in the 60s. Before we had all of this surveillance, they were already doing that. It's gotten a little bit easier and cheaper for them, but there's also a lot more of us out there, and there's a lot more of us doing things. And as much as I think we do need the laws to protect us, like I was pissed off about them trying to ban TikTok instead of just pass privacy protections.
Yeah.
No, we're going to ban this one company from China because we want your data. We don't want China to have your data. We want your data. And then China can still just buy it from a data broker.
Yeah.
Yeah. One wonders how much that was about Gaza and people actually getting, scenes from Gaza instead of the normal channels blocking and censoring. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. The Seth Moulton voted for it, I'll say.
Yeah, well, now it's Trump talk, so I hope everyone's happy. Oh my God, I mean, it does strike me as like in general there's such a problem of like I get a notice for some type of data breach that I've been involved in like every few months now. Like it's just lost over and over again, and after a certain point, it just becomes background noise, as well as the fact that like every communications channel that I possess is overrun with scams and fraud. The phone, like 9 out of 10 phone calls is a scam. Probably 99 out of 100 emails is some kind of scam. And it's just, it's so obnoxious,
Yeah. And part of what's made it hard to crack down on is that politicians rely on those same pathways to raise money.
Yeah.
Right. God. It really is that simple. If people see politicians who aren't in bed with the various donors and who therefore can say, look at all these terrible things, I'm going after them all because I'm not in bed with them. It's not rocket science. It just takes a little courage and an effort to talk to real people and get small donations and,
and build a real alternative. And I think that that's where, my volunteers there's no substitute for genuine enthusiasm. You cannot buy it for any amount of money. And it's the only thing we've seen beat the millions and millions of dollars.
Right. And so my last question is, how are you feeling about the primary? Because what's September 1st, something like that is when it all goes down. Is it too early to kind of know the dynamics with all the different competitors for the spot? What are you thinking?
Yeah, I think I'm excited by the conversations that I'm having with voters and people on the street and my volunteers and the people chipping in $25, $50.
Right.
Because, we have thousands of donors. They aren't donating the same amount as the thousands of donors the guy with millions of dollars has. But we have people genuinely looking forward to things from this. And that, when we can build those communities, we can build lasting change. And so regardless of whether we win or not in September.
Right. It's a long-term process. This
is a long-term process. And I think we have the best chance of beating the millions of dollars out of, much like Democrats don't win by being slightly worse Republicans.
Right.
Like we're the immigration thing. We're cracking down on criminal immigrants, just not quite as much as the other person. Now the only people voting for you are people who want like the harassment of our immigrant neighbors, but don't want quite that much. Right? Like that's a narrow band. Right. And so similarly, like if you want an establishment politician, are you going to go for the guy who was in Biden's White House participating in all of that? Or are you going to go for and has millions of dollars, you're going to go for the person who is like not quite as much of not quite as good an establishment politician, who only has hundreds of thousands of dollars. Like, I don't think that's you need to give people a genuine choice between politics as usual and a theory of how we get to something better.
Right. How competitive is, like, for November? Do Republicans usually have a good chance, or what's the history of that?
No, no Republicans come close since the 90s.
Okay, yeah. So the real battle's the primary.
Yeah. It's pretty, especially this year. I mean, we had, I think, 17 different No Kings rallies in this district. I went to 5 of them myself.
That's a lot. Yeah.
People are mad. And people are frustrated, and people are fed up with the Democratic establishment too. Like we had the chair of our Democratic town committee quit because he was like, "I'm done."
Mad as hell, I'm not going to take it anymore. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Well, that's probably about as much time as we want to eat up of yours. But where can folks find you if they're interested?
Yeah, my socials are Beth with the number 4MA. So that's on Blue Sky, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. And then my website's beth4democracy.com. And you can sign up there for my email list. You can sign up there to volunteer, and you can make a donation, because all together we're going to get this done and reboot America.
Wonderful. Thank you, Beth. We'll be rooting for you.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
After the left anchor bump, you're pretty much, it's in the bag.
Good track record. Don't worry.
But thanks for coming on the show, and thanks for listening, everybody. We will see you in the next episode.